Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bassam Haddad, and I'm joined today by Thompson as my co host and dear friend. And we are speaking with Tommy Marcus. All of these people will be introduced in just a minute. This particular conversation is titled Imprisoned in Israel, a Jewish American's Journey for Palestinian Rights. We are very delighted actually to speak with Tommy about his experience on the Global Sumud flotilla, and I'll get to his bio in just a moment. But first, I would like to introduce my dear friend and, dare I say, former student, Ann Thompson. Who is vice president of strategic communications at M&R, you can tell us if you like what that is, and where she helps nonprofit advocacy groups run issue campaigns. Previously, she was in house at MoveOn, the National Employment Law Project, and the Obama 2012 re election campaign. She has also worked in media, producing for MSNBC and Quilting Point Productions at the Arab Studies Institute, which actually co organizes this entire series of Gaza in Context. Welcome, Anne. How are you?
Oh, thank you, Bassam. I just wanted to share that when you were saying that, it made me think of a few weeks ago. I was on a plane and I was just having one of those moments high above the clouds, reflecting back on my life. Not sure exactly why, but I was just thinking about how important, like, of a person you've been in my life, how I met
Oh,
you 22 years ago. And like, it was a real inflection point and a real turning point for how my career went in production because you taught me production skills and filming skills that I went to on to transform my career, and also like what you taught me in the classroom and just how transformational
oh,
the education was, and like that's what education is at its deepest core. So thank you for having such a profound impact on my life.
wow. I didn't expect this, Anne. I'm blushing. I don't easily blush. Okay, thank you so much. It was mutual because I learned a lot from you, and I follow what you do, and I am in awe of what you have been doing. And thanks for introducing me to Tommy. We will both be interviewing Tommy today, and I'll say a couple words about Tommy before I open the floor. Most of the time, Tommy will be speaking, so we're not really going to continue talking without having him chime in. Tommy Marcus is the creator of the viral Instagram account Quentin Quarantino. Please feel free to tell us about this if you'd like. He set out to create a meme page during the pandemic, but has since used his Instagram fame, which, if you follow, then you know, to raise more than $30 million for humanitarian causes. He was aboard the Global Samud flotilla carrying aid to Palestinians when they were arrested by Israeli naval forces. Tommy and his fellow Jewish American friend David Adler were singled out and forced to be filmed with Israeli National Security Minister Ew, Itamar Ben Gvir when the convoy was intercepted. Tommy spent 5 days in an Israeli prison and returned home to Los Angeles on Friday. So, welcome home, Tommy. I really don't know what to tell you, but I am very excited and delighted that you are here. And we are looking forward to speaking with you about your experience. And maybe the best way to start this is to ask you to share with us a bit about your experience on the flotilla and then what happened after. But first, welcome to Gaza in Context.
Thank you so much, Bassam and Anne, for having me on. I'm really I feel privileged to be given a platform like this to speak on. It's funny enough, I got out of prison and I really thought that there would be a lot of press coverage about the flotilla members being in prison and being tortured. And interestingly enough, there really wasn't. And so I'm so grateful to people like you, and especially Palestinians who have loud voices and make their very righteous causes be heard by people. So it's a true honor to be on here, and I thank you so much for having me. I joined the flotilla because I'm an activist and because I have spent many years dedicating my life to helping people. And I wasn't always an anti-Zionist. I wasn't always using staunch language against Israel. And while I have changed course over the past year, and I've raised a lot of money for Palestine, and I've done a lot of online work, I really felt that even after raising $2 million for charity for the Palestine Children's Relief Fund, it still felt and changing a lot of minds. I still had this feeling like I wasn't doing enough, like there was more that I could do. And the flotilla gave me an opportunity, and I'm so grateful for it, to, physically do something. And that was really important to me, especially as an American and someone with a Jewish background. Like, I really felt that my presence could be a benefit in addition to my platform while I was on the flotilla. And I think that interpretation beforehand was correct. So in the month, 5 weeks even, that we were on the boat, a lot happened. We were bombed twice. And I say twice, two separate instances, 16 total bombs. We were the recipients of some very sinister Hasbara. The flotilla began as the selfie yacht that everyone was making fun of, these dumb activists for going on a cruise. And then, as it gained steam and they had trouble kind of managing how to deal with us, we watched it in real time turn into the Hamas flotilla on the Hasbara, and watched all of us, like all 500 of us, be lied about, have our intentions lied about, have the facts of do we have aid on the boats even lied about by Israel, and slowly saw them building from what first felt like a very loose blanket statement from Ben-Gvir in the beginning of September saying, oh, all the flotilla members will be sent to terrorist prison. And we were like, okay, sure, Ben-Gvir. To, 3 weeks in, I posted a video saying, I can't believe I'm saying this, but we need the help of the world to understand that we're in danger. And 12 hours later, being bombed by Israeli drones. And that was the second instance of being bombed by Israeli drones. And, when I think about the month that I spent on two different boats, I say two because one of my boat's engines sort of mysteriously failed near the end, and I had to switch boats. I was able to meet so many incredible activists, Palestinians, people who were all sharing the same mission and the same, I think, righteous desire that I had to put themselves on the line and do what governments and, organizations like the United Nations weren't willing to do, try to deliver aid to Gaza. So, it's very sad that we weren't able to complete our mission. We did know that was a possibility, but it was an important precedent that we were trying to set. And ultimately, I think, and we'll get into it, but we were treated very poorly on a surprising degree. Maybe it shouldn't have been surprising, but it was, at least to me. And I think overall, it was a really terrible decision by Israel to handle us the way they did. I think they made themselves look stupid every step of the way, between changing their lives from selfie yacht to Hamas flotilla to transparently bombing us and then lying about it, and then even the U.S. government confirming that it was in fact them who bombed us, and then torturing us and putting us in the same internment camp that they keep the Palestinian hostages. So it was a crazy journey. I'm definitely still processing some of this, even as we speak. This is my I think part of my therapy is just going on podcasts like yours and talking to wonderful Palestinians who can understand and relate in some ways to the experience that I and the rest of the flotilla members had. But overall, it's just like really grateful, even after the week or 5 days in prison that were uh, quite not a good time. I still am so thankful that this all happened, including the prison time, and I'm thankful that I get to now speak about it because sadly, a lot of people. I think you even highlighted this in your intro. Not you've been speaking about this for years, and so there's some Americans who sadly don't listen to have not listened to Palestinians, and maybe they're waking up now. But I've tried to put myself in a position where I can help bring the light and help bring people to listen to people like you. So that was why I'm on the flotilla. Why I was on the flotilla. So I'm on this podcast, and that's why I'm going to continue to do things like this.
Well, that sounds like a very harrowing experience, Tommy. So I guess I just want to ask you a little bit about what you learned from that experience that maybe you hadn't learned from like reading or talking to people beforehand, um, by being, face to face and with the Israeli government, with the IDF in an Israeli prison. Like, what deeper understanding or new understanding did you get of the Israeli regime?
Yeah, so I think there's one element that really stands out as being a new experience for me. Like there's many things that were kind of reinforced. Like I wasn't, so I kind of am needed to see for myself to have it reinforced. But one thing that really stood out to me after receiving kind of like a uniquely harsh treatment for being Jewish American was that Israel, first of all, is anti-Semitic, and second of all, like there's no sort of title that you can have, whether it be American, Jewish. If you are someone that Israel views to be standing in their way, and they've demonstrated this for a long time, this isn't new. They killed Rachel Corrie in 2003. If you're someone who stands in Israel's way, it doesn't matter if you're Jewish, it doesn't matter if you're American. All that matters is that you are opposing the lies that Israel has been spewing for the past 7 decades. And I think that's the biggest lesson that I learned. The most of the other things that I would point to are more reinforced things that I was like, I hope this isn't true, and then kind of meeting thousands of Israelis during my experience and being like, wow, it's like this is all kind of true. It really is a militarized. Like I had to see the the prison guards and the IDF soldiers in person to really truly understand that it's a societal problem, which I did know and was talking about before the flotilla. But it always like made me feel a little uncomfortable when I would get to that level speaking publicly of like, to quote like Norm Finkelstein, like, Israel is kind of like a lunatic society. It's a weaponized society that is built on these lies of like the Arabs want to kill all the Jews, and built on quite literally just killing Palestinian people. That is part of being the foundational ideology of Israel. And I saw it I saw that in the behavior of all of the guards, of all of the IDF soldiers, of every single person I encountered in the entire experience. I think something that stuck out to me is like when you watch a movie about like bad people, there's usually a good guy who's part of the group and kind of stuck. There's like a story about how they're kind of stuck in this situation and they're being the nice guy and coming in. There was never some person who came in after we were being tortured and was like, sorry about the rest of those people. Like, here's a bottle of water or something. Like, they all really enjoyed this experience. And, something that I've heard my Palestinian activist friends say a lot over the time that we've become close is, the cruelty is the point. And that is something that I saw represented very clearly in many cases over the 5 days. And it's again like that's not something that is new news to me. I've watched this genocide unfold. I've watched what they do to Palestinians, which is not comparable to what they do to me. But experiencing it for myself, or experiencing at least a microcosm of that society and the cruelty of that society, that was eye-opening for me.
Uh, Tommy, I don't know what to tell you. I am very sorry about what you experienced, not least because you actually took it upon yourself to take this great risk, considering what Israel is doing in Gaza. It's not something that one does thinking that they're going to obey, any sort of inkling or notion of anything of international law or any even the decency standards of decency. But you had suggested in passing uh, something about because you and your friend were Jewish, you had a worst experience. Just correct me if I'm wrong, if this is something that you kind of suggested, and how was that different, if indeed that's the case?
No, yeah, it was the case. It's crazy to say, and I do want to preface this with the fact that a couple of the Arab nation hostages that were taken from the flotilla were subjected to more physical torture than I received, and it's important to note. But I was, along with my Jewish American friend David Adler, singled out from the very beginning of all of, from the second we were taken in by Israel as the Jews. So, like, it was from the get-go the most anti-Semitic experience I've ever had as someone who grew up going to a high school that had swastikas drawn on it, and is very familiar with what real anti-Semitism is, not like co-opted terminology anti-Semitism about Israel. It's the most anti-Semitism I've ever received from the very get-go, from sitting in the prisoner position at the port, right when they were taking us in, right when Ben Gvir was approaching. David Adler and myself, the two Jewish male members of the flotilla, were asked if we were Jewish, with the guards knowing the answer. We said yes. We were picked up by the guards, dragged to the back, to the same back corner where Greta was in the corner holding an Israeli flag and forced to sit in the wall and look at the corner, back to everyone. And David and I were made to stare at the Israeli flag for like few hours, and I don't. It seemed like there was some sort of goal here of making us understand something because we were Jewish and because maybe there's a Star of David on the flag of Israel. But I can say, that definitely didn't help. But then, more so after this strange setup of staring at the Israeli flag, we were We were then, David and I, the two Jewish men of the flotilla, picked up, dragged out of this area with all of the flotilla members, and taken outside of the fences of that area. And we were very confused, like what is happening right now? And when we look up, we see Ben Gavir uh, surrounded by a posse of 40 IDF soldiers walking into the section we were just pulled out of with everyone else. And that was when Ben Gavir did this photo op, like sort of video thing where he yells at everyone for being terrorists. But we had strangely been taken out of this, and we were just couldn't figure out what was going on. And the next thing that happened was that they took us to David and I to the processing facility and sat us down, two individual chairs, and then Itamar Ben Gavir himself comes up to us each individually and yells at us about how we're terrorists and traitors with cameras behind him, clearly for some sort of social media video shoot that was going to be about, like, look at these self-hating Jews or whatever. But the funny thing to me was I got out of jail or prison and really expecting to see that clip. And I realized that, like, it didn't go very well for them, so they didn't share it. Like, David and I's I think facial replies were so negative that I don't think they deemed that video to be good enough for social media. But it did happen, and after that, we were, blindfolded, beaten, zip tied, thrown onto a metal prison bus, and shipped off to Kitsiat prison in the Negev desert, which I really don't feel like prison is the right word for it. I've been calling it internment camp, and I think that's accurate for our situation as well as accurate for the Palestinian hostages that are held there situation. And from there, we were starved. We were beaten, we were psychologically tortured, and each of us, in our own ways, were singled out over the following 5 days as victims of torture and made to believe that we were never leaving. So by the final 2 days, I fully believed that I was going to be in this internment camp for months or years, if not the rest of my life. And I was rational in thinking that. I had watched directly the United States tell me they were abandoning us. I had listened to guards telling me I was never getting out of there. And I had watched 90% of this internment camp, of all the flotilla members, be emptied. All the European nations gone, people from the global south gone, us still there. And so the rational conclusion by day 4 was, I'm never getting out of here. And that, while that didn't end up being the reality, thank God, being able to, the fact that I did think that for 24, maybe 48 hours, like I don't think I'm getting out of here. It makes me able to relate to the much more severely treated and severely tortured and long-term in prison, but still it makes me look at the stories of Palestinian hostages and at least be able on a very small level be like, I know what those guards do. I know what they say. I know how they torture. I know how evil they are, and I know how much they love watching the people, like the Palestinians. They told us that we were animals and that we were subhuman, which is, as we know, how Israelis view Palestinians. So being able to experience that, I'm grateful for it all. Now that I'm sitting here, truly grateful to Israel for doing this to me, because while I was already a Palestine uh, advocate and activist before all of this, I come home now and I'm like, I know what this feels like personally on a small scale, and that activates me even more. So I'm grateful to be able to talk about this on shows like yours. I'm grateful to be able to share about this on the internet. And I think going forward, it's only going to help my solidarity and speaking out about what the Palestinian struggle is. And again, what I went through is not comparable to what Palestinians go through, whether in Gaza, in this genocide, in the West Bank, under apartheid, or in these prisons, the same prisons that I was in, but in different circumstances with different red lines that the guards had. But still, even with all that said, there's a level of personal solidarity that I feel that I already felt from having Palestinian friends. But now I just feel like I get the brutality on a more profound level.
Thanks, Tommy. You went from having your social media post in support of Israel in 2023, sometime in 2023, being reposted by the actual Israeli government, to being imprisoned by that same government 2 years later. Can you tell us a little bit about that dramatic turn of events?
Yeah, I
And
did the whole roundabout.
yeah,
I
and
don't think there's many people who've both been on Israel's
yeah,
page, favor Instagram page favorably, and then also been tortured by them. So that might have to
and
contact Guinness World Records or something, but I don't know if they're going to include that in their
if
next issue. But
let me get one more thing in, because I want you to also address not only your experience but how generalizable is this experience among some of your friends or
yeah,
peers, and they could be actually anybody. I mean, this is not, as we all know, Jesus Christ, as we all know, this is not about Jews or Muslims or Christians or atheists or Buddhists or Shintos or whatever. I mean, it's not about any of these things, right? So what is the extent to which some of your acquaintances and friends have had similar experiences as a result of the live streamed genocide? And kind of like, I must ask, uh, since you're a social media, you know, uh, figure, or you're on social media, was it just the genocide that did that? Or, I mean, in other words, pardon me if I'm asking, what were you looking at before? Because a lot of the images and stories and headlines were not rosy prior to genocide. In fact, they were horrific. So can you just tell us about this experience? Because it's
yeah,
important to recognize this shift and what was happening before the shift.
yeah. I'm so glad you pointed out before because that's very important. And I was already an activist beforehand, advocating for people, all the way from Afghanistan to Hawaii. I've done things that are objectively good all around the world. And in 2021, um, when the West Bank settlement expansion and the Free Palestine movement was really um, growing, I initially like I had put so little thought into Israel in my life that I just kind of was like, okay, this looks terrible. I'm gonna share something about it, and I did. I shared a pro-Palestine post. Um, like just sort of like I don't know what's going on, but here's like some things that people are saying. And I remember like right when I like 2 minutes after I posted it, I got a message from the one Israeli woman that I know. And it was like, Tommy, I'm in a bomb shelter right now and I have in Tel Aviv and I have kids. Like, what about me? You're forgetting about me. And that in that moment, it really affected me. I took down my post. Later in the day, I made a statement about anti-Semitism, and then I like contacted Israeli activists, or I feel like that's not even a phrase that you can use, but Israeli activists, and I spoke to them. And from then, from 2021 to 2023, the only people that I spoke to about Israel were Zionists. I never asked a Palestinian for their opinion, and I'd grown up with this belief instilled with me that Israel was like a necessary evil, I would say. Like I was never like a champion of Israel, but the Jewish people that I trusted the most, were people who told me that Israel exists so the Holocaust doesn't happen again. So that's scary to me. Like fighting against something that I'm told is the preventer of the next Holocaust. That's scary to me. And so I was scared for a long time. I was missing a mixture of misinformed and scared. And you fast forward that to like October 7th, at which point I do have like one very good Palestinian friend, who I just didn't really speak about Israel with, aside from being like, yeah, that Netanyahu guy is like kind of like the Trump who I hate of the Middle East. And like little did I know, it's like it has nothing to do with Netanyahu. But fast forward to October 7th, I saw the clips and was like, okay, I need to make a statement about like Israel and anti-Semitism and Jewish people. And I only consulted with Zionists and Israelis and put together a statement as someone who like never kind of professes to be an all-knowing expert. When I talk about stuff that I don't feel like I'm an expert on, like I feel like I'm an expert on domestic American politics. But when I reach out of that field of expertise and am speaking about a place that I acknowledge publicly that I don't have like a deep education on or anything, I talk to who I think are intelligent and compassionate people who can relate to the area, and I very wrongly only contacted Zionists. I only listened to Zionists at this point. So I put out this just grotesque statement that was only about Israel and only about Jews. And like I think I had a sort of like, and also it's terrible that a bunch of Palestinians are going to die. Kind of mirroring the language that I would see over the next 2 years of like Israelis were murdered and Palestinians are dying mysteriously in Gaza. Um, so I was complicit for a while. For the first 4 or 5 months, I was what I was calling trying to be unbiased. I would later realize there's no bias in a genocide. You're either supporting the people who are being genocided 100%, or you're on the wrong side of history. So my desire to be unbiased and poll Israelis if they were offended by my content was pathetic. But I didn't really realize that, and I've since forgiven myself because over the next year I would watch this genocide unfold. I would listen to my Palestinian friends and see their suffering. Um, just watching their people be exterminated. I would see the lies. I would see myself be called anti-Semitic even in this period of time where I'm telling you I was complicit in genocide. Anytime I would even put out a little statement about like things being not good in Gaza, I would get essays sent to me by former Zionist friends and followers of like, you don't understand how harmful this is, like you're betraying the Jewish people. And mind you, these are statements of like, there may or may not be war crimes happening in Gaza right now, like not the stuff that I'm saying now. And I think I think that was one of the first eye openers, was because I knew that was, I've been covering war for years at this point. I covered the Ukraine war very diligently in a journalistic fashion. I covered the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan. I've covered a lot of bad things and been deeply involved in them. So, I'm an open-minded person who also is, willing to be wrong and willing to view things that challenge my viewpoint. And so watching children be massacred at a large scale made me realize within By summer 2024, I knew I'd handled it completely wrong. And like, honestly, there was like this shame but also fear from like what my Zionist friends were saying to me and my Jewish friends were saying to me, that like I just kind of shut up for a bit. And, as someone who's spent so long fighting Donald Trump, who is an evil fascist in his own right, I then got kind of sucked into the belief set that I need to just do anything it takes to help Kamala Harris, just to beat Donald Trump, and I'll worry about the genocide afterwards. And again, that's something that like I'm ashamed to say it was a miscalculation, but that's what I did with my very powerful mind-changing platform. I focused on like changing conservative minds who were considering voting for Trump into voting for Kamala, not addressing the very, very righteous concerns of people on the left and just Arab and Muslim people and people with the conscience who were ahead of me in understanding the depths of Israel's hand in American politics and all that, and saying I won't vote for someone who supports genocide. Like I was on the other side of that. I walked into the DNC in the line of people being yelled at by Palestinian protesters, and in my head at that time, I already knew it was a genocide. In my head, I'm like, I'm on your side. Stop yelling at me. I'm just trying to get Trump out, and then we can do this. But that wasn't the right way to go about things at all. And once she lost, I really had the opportunity to reflect on that. It was so devastating to me, and still is devastating to me, that Trump is president again. But then I had an opportunity to reflect on that, to look at polls, to look at statistics and surveys, and also just watch continuously the genocide get worse and worse, and somehow get exponentially worse. Like it seemed to just every day I opened my phone, the atrocities were getting larger, and the lies on the other side were kind of mirroring that growth. And it was just becoming such this absurd lie that I knew I had this complicity in. And I also knew, as someone who's raised $35 million for charity since I started, that I have this unique power to help people. So I'm watching these mutilated children in Gaza, not only feeling like I haven't been saying the right things with my very vast influence on people's opinions on the internet, but I've also been missing out on providing a large amount of financial support to these people as well. So, after taking 2 months off, I would say genuinely for mental health reasons at that point, like I just hated my work. I was ashamed of my work, and I went on like a 2-month trip and just didn't log into Instagram for 2 months. I got back and I was like, the only way that I can keep running this page that I'm so proud, historically so proud of, and is my pride and joy of my life, is if I start opening my mouth about Palestine. And I'll never be able to forgive myself if I don't. I truly. So from then on, I started to say things. I was still scared, and I was still, as I now reflect, still uneducated. Like I knew it was a genocide. I knew Israel was doing very bad things, but I still had this opinion that, not opinion, just like kind of thing I wasn't addressing in the back of my mind. Like Israel was still like kind of had to exist because of the Holocaust. Like I had never really researched the Nakba. I knew that my friend had grandparents who lived in Jaffa until 1948, but I didn't somehow connect the dots on the brutality of all of that, and how sinister the creation of Israel was. So when I started to get loud, I started to get a lot of hate. I started to become like an obsession for tens of thousands of American Zionists. And that started, I mean, their outrage at me, it started to make me even more aware of how deep the rot and the brainwash is amongst Zionists. Because I can't remember if it was the Israeli embassy shooting or the instance where those two women were killed at the pro-Israel rally, but one of those two instances, I believe, when there was the shooting at the Israeli embassy. I must have received 5,000 messages that night because I had just started getting loud about Palestine and the genocide, like within a few weeks of that. I must have received 5,000 direct personal messages blaming me for that happening. Like, are you happy now, Tommy? Like, this is what you've done. And I remember thinking how ridiculous that was, and kind of reflecting on how can you get to a point where you're blaming a social media influencer activist who's been just talking about how children are being killed, like without really digging that deep into it, just being like, a lot of children are being killed and this is objectively bad, and I'm going to raise money for it. But how could these people see that stuff and come to the conclusion of Tommy Marcus is killing Jews, or Tommy Marcus is a self-hating Jew, or Tommy Marcus is an anti-Semite? Like, it was so crazy to me that it actually I'm so thankful for them because it encouraged me to look deeper into the sources of the problem. And so then that's when I reached out to someone who had been my friend for a long time, like a social media friend, but someone who had shared my activism with other causes for a long time and happened to be Palestinian, who I hadn't talked to in a while because she was so disappointed in the way that I covered the genocide. Uh, Alana Hadid, who's a very brilliant, well-read and educated Palestinian American who does amazing activism on her page. And I was like, basically like, Alana, I know you know that I fucked this up really bad. And, I know that now, but I still don't get everything. Like, I need help. Like I was describing earlier to you, like I had just how I approached Israeli activists in 2021 and 2023. I was now doing that same outreach to the smartest Palestinian I could think of, Alana. And Alana introduced me to her other genius Palestinian friend, Janan Matari, whose book is sitting right there. And over the next couple months, we had this group chat that was like decolonizing Tommy's mind, and every day still, I would feel like I was learning something brand new. I would have a question, and Janan would send me a video that she recorded 97 weeks ago that fully answered my question. And then I started to, look deeper. Like, do you have more resources for me? And there was something that they kind of were very intent on me watching, that stuck with me on like a profound level. This documentary, Tantura, that was the first time that I ever realized that the people who created Israel were evil monsters, to put it. They were the same genocidal Arabs aren't people. All Palestinians deserve to die. Maybe even on somehow even a more despicable level, because you watch this documentary and they're just recounting like murdering women and children with glee. And that video was so upsetting to me, or that documentary, it was so upsetting to me. Like, I had to pause it over, and I'm someone who very frequently just watches everything from start to finish. And it was so disturbing to me, like worse than a horror film, that every like 20 minutes I'd be like, whew, I need to like get some air and like recenter myself before I keep watching this, because it was like watching all like the remaining remnants of my Zionism just fall away and the brainwashing unwind. Like, wow,
Yeah.
it has been this bad since 1948, and really even before 1948. And the cruelty has always been the point, and killing Palestinians has always been the point. And, Israel was truly just founded
Well,
on a
just
land where a bunch of people were peacefully sitting and just massacred. And that was my real awakening
also just to
to,
be I don't mean to cut you off, but also
No, you're good.
just to be accurate, it isn't exclusively killing Palestinians. It's transferring them, getting rid of them, pushing
Oh
them
yes,
out,
ethnic cleansing, of course.
thinning the population. I mean, there are variants, and they're all horrible, right? But I just wanted to interject with that because we have the record, and the record has all these varieties. Not just like the question of like eliminating, but it is a form of elimination in one way, whether transfer or end of life or so on. But
Yeah.
thank you so much for all of this. The architecture you provided is so valuable, and I mean, actually, I have a lot more questions, but we want to keep this to we're already like beyond the hour, or getting to the hour. So I'm gonna leave the last question for Anne, and I'd love to continue this conversation with you in real life. We
Likewise.
unfortunately we there's a podcast bubble now, and I think it needs to be broken a little bit, because people think this is where life is, and I mean, it is in part, but it's being reduced to podcasts. Things are being reduced, and I think that's not healthy. I'll stop pontificating. Anne.
Yeah, I just wanted to, like, based on what you just shared, Tommy, I just wanted to reflect that, like, just to change your mind about something, I think is so, open your mind to new information is something that's like very hard to do. To do it in the public eye, like in front of friends, family, the whole internet. Like, I find even coming on this podcast bubble very, very intimidating. And you're speaking to like millions of people every day. So, like, doing it and changing your mind is hard. Changing your mind in front of a lot of other people is hard. Changing your mind in front of a lot of people and getting tons of like hate and anger and threats, that's hard. So just want to commend you for doing those very hard things, but also like ask if there's a way that a lot more people can do those hard things. Because, there are a lot of leaders, a lot of elites, whether they be, lawmakers, media elites, other key decision makers, influencers, podcasters, what have you, that have do not share the position that you have arrived at. And I think it's especially an important question to raise when we see now that there's many billionaire supporters of Israel who are buying up additional media platforms, traditional media, new media. What do you think that we can learn from your experience of like transformation that could help grease the wheels for other key decision makers, other key public leaders to adjust their stance?
Well, first of all, thank you for the compliments. But I think, first of all, I had to do it. It was like the least I could do given what I had done beforehand. And I think using myself as an example, and putting myself out there in that sense of like, I was really wrong and I'm embarrassed and please listen to me. I don't think I know it changed a significant amount of people's minds who had been following me for a long time, and even people who were introduced to me through that content. But in terms of like reasons why others should, I immediately thought of how I did not expect to be forgiven by Palestinians and by pro-Palestine activists. I thought it was going to be like a good for you, but like still fuck you for being wrong and for being complicit. And I have not received that at all, and it was so shocking to me. But I realize now, like, why that is the case. It's because Palestinian people are unfortunately so used to needing to be patient and needing to understand the fact that a lot of the world is brainwashed against them to think that they're terrorists. So it's almost sad that I was put into the position that I was, where I became a prominent activist for the Palestinian cause, because, I think what I've learned the most from speaking to Palestinian people who are inspired by my work is just that there's such a lack of people with a spine. Um, and you can see that also on like Miss Rachel, my friend, now in the children's show host, like being another one of the most prominent uh, Palestine advocates. And we've had conversations about this specifically, like Rachel and I, like, isn't it depressing that the world requires you and I to be speaking about Palestine? Like, there are more important people who should be talking about this that aren't me and aren't Miss Rachel. They're sitting in government. They're sitting on, TikTok and Instagram pages with millions of followers talking about how they hate Trump and pretending like Palestine doesn't exist. Those people, I have an influence. Ms. Rachel has an influence, but those people are, in my mind, the most complicit of them all, like more so than right-wing people, because the liberals run on and profess themselves publicly on the idea that they are the kind people, that they're the people who stand for humanity. And it's been so devastating to realize that so many of the kind of more moderate liberals, like Kamala Harris supporter types, are just they don't want to open their mouth because they feel like it will have too much professional backlash. And I get it, because I was in that spot for a long time. Like, I was scared about the social backlash. I was scared about the professional backlash, and it was real. I burned a lot of bridges. I think I've made the least amount of money this year than I've made in many years. But I can sleep at night now, and I have the immense honor of knowing that I've helped in a genocide, of knowing that, like, whether it be financially with fundraising, feeding, like directly feeding children in Gaza, or directly providing surgeries in Gaza, or going on the flotilla, or changing tens of thousands of people's minds with the help of my friends Alana and Janan, but truly changing tons of minds. Like, I sleep well at night, even after Israeli torture prison, because I know that I think what is the most disgusting modern atrocity that has been backed by my country, the United States, that has been co-opted by my religious heritage, Judaism, I took a stand. And I hope that in the coming weeks, months, and years, that these people that I'm referring to either have one of two things happen: a come to Jesus moment, where they start talking about the illegal occupation of Palestine and the inhumane treatment and brutality that Palestinians have faced for 7 decades, or Nuremberg trials. And just to be clear, I think I will have my own Nuremberg trial, but I think I'm going to pass it. So hopefully, but I think I've gotten to the point that I'm confident about that.
Tommy, I really thank you for your humanity, and even though that's an inappropriate thing to thank somebody for, but these days it's kind of like, okay. And thanks for the honesty. Actually, that's the main thing. Thanks for your honesty and candidness in addressing what happened to you on the journey, but also before, which is very important and very courageous. And a lot of people try to gloss over and try to provide excuses. And we have this, of course, in many other cases in the world, where, I mean, there are other horrible players and horrible actors in the world besides Israel's apartheid existence. And people do change their minds, and people do see what's going on, and it's not instructive for others, because the way they recount the narrative makes it look like there wasn't an aha moment. Oh, wait a minute! It was just you know, uh, like a seamless transition. And I appreciate what you shared with us. Um, we promised you we won't keep you for more than an hour, but there's one thing that I would like to show.
I could say.
There was a an Instagram post about you speaking if you were captured during the trip. Like there was this post. I'm gonna show it. If you can just set it up for us. Let me see. Okay. Can you set this up for us?
Yeah, this is filmed days before capture with Middle East Eye journalist Matilda. We were filming like okay, if I'm in captivity, what do I want the world to know while I'm in prison? And I'm very happy. I forgot about this video actually, and so when I got out of prison, I watched it and I was like, oh, yes, this is the message I wanted to get out. So I'm it also represents like me not really understanding what was about to happen to me. But like I've said in this interview, like I think that's all for the best.
Okay. Well, I should have asked before. Do you mind if we play it?
Oh, I would prefer for you to
Okay.
play
Like, all right. Let's
it.
see. So, all right. So this is not
You gotta
playing.
press the volume thing on the bottom right,
Yeah, yeah.
maybe.
I'm gonna reboot.
So I'm a citizen of the United States of America, and my message from Israeli custody is that I'm happy I went on this mission, and as you're listening to this, Israel is more than likely continuing their genocide of Palestinian people with the goal of erasing all who live there, and for that reason, I knew what I signed up, have been willing to take the punishment, and will continue to. Thank you, and free Palestine. If
All
I
right.
had the opportunity to take that video again, I would have said the same exact thing.
Well, that's good, my friend. I I feel that we kept you here long enough, and I know that you have work to do. So we're gonna let you go, but not before asking you what's next. And if Anne would like to add something before we break, that would you like to add something to this question so we could, or do you want to just let him answer that? Basically, what's next?
Dad, what's next, yo? How's that?
Okay.
I think, in my mind, David Adler and I were kind of speaking in our hotel in Jordan when we had just gotten out, and we're still wearing our prisoner clothes. Like, okay, did we really just get tortured for being Jewish? And like, yeah, that really just happened. My first, I didn't expect to be talking to a lot of press. Like, if you asked me a month ago when I was on the flotilla, like, when you get out, are you going to be talking to the press a bunch? I didn't expect that to be a goal of mine because I don't really care about press, and I have a big Instagram. Like, it just doesn't really matter to me. But David and I had this conversation of like, people need to hear this story. Like, so I'm when you ask what's next, it's like I like sleep, therapy, like I from the torture, like maybe a vacation, but I'm also going to Jordan and Egypt with the PCRF to visit children that I helped receive surgery with money I raised. So like, what's next is also Palestine activism. I'm more hardened and focused on doing that than I've ever been in my life. But for right now, I'm so grateful to people like you for letting me tell this story, because I'm really hopeful, as someone who's been changing minds all year, that I'm really hopeful that this continues to change people's minds and to wake people up, even people who understood it's a genocide, but are at the point that I described earlier that still don't really understand the depths of Israel. And so that's my hope. And my hope is also to activate people to anger, for people to be angry about what happened, because they should be. They should have already been maximum angry about the genocide, but some people aren't and haven't been. And so, for the same reason that I put myself onto the flotilla, I'm kind of pushing through the sleep deprivation to do as much of this as possible, because I want I want this story to be told. And after that, I will probably sleep. There may be a 3-day vacation. Then I'll go to Egypt and Jordan, and then I will continue steadfastly on advocating for free Palestine and everything else I do. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Habibi. I really appreciate you coming on, and I hope we continue to stay in touch. And thank you so much for joining me. And we should do this again.
I would love
To
to.
Yeah, we should do this again. The three of us, maybe with others, but definitely. And you're an awesome co-host, and I'd love to have you join me if you will indulge in the future. All power to you both, Tommy, and I'm glad you are safe. I understand that there's a lot of emotional and psychological sort of residue and trauma that is involved here. And my apologies if I got straight to the point, but we did need to
Oh,
hear from
no,
you. And take care of
it's what I
yourself.
wanted.
Take care of yourself, and
So
thank
thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much. Thank you, Anne. I'm so
Thanks, Anne.
grateful to you both. And this was a lovely conversation. And thank you.
Take care of everybody. Bye.
Bye.